Okay, planning board, we are live and we are recording. Phone lines will remain off.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the planning board of the town of East Hampton. Our meeting is September 21st, 2022. We have 3 matters on for site plan review. The Shagwan Marina matter is being adjourned at the applicant's request. So we have, like I say, 3 matters on for site plan review. We have a couple of order reviews and a couple of resolutions, one of which we'll do in connection with the site plan. So let's start with American Tower at 103 Flagy Road. Eric is going to cover that. He's got it for the board and is the applicant. There you are. Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay. So the board last discussed this at last week's meeting. We prepared an EAF Part 2 and Part 3 with a negative declaration, as the board agreed to at last week's meeting. So the board should review that document, let us know of any edits or changes that need to be made. If there are none, then the board, it's recommended, adopts a negative declaration. And we also have a resolution on for you for this evening to schedule a public hearing.
Yeah, Mr. Peter?
Not much of questions.
Okay. We have the EAF form, and I'm just going to put it up to the board. Usually, it's been my practice to read off the entire 11 items, and I'm going to do that tonight because we haven't announced a change. But if anybody feels that we're wasting time doing that, please say so. I mean, ordinarily we go through these and there aren't any changes, but I do think I think there's some value in going through it, particularly to allow the public to understand what it is that we're considering in these analyses. But and tonight, as it happens, we have an agenda that affords us a little time to do this and also to talk about it. So you don't have to make a decision right now. As I say, I'm going to go through it. But in the future, if anybody has any strong thoughts, I've heard from some members about it, and if any other members think, like I say, we're taking up time doing something we don't need to do, please let me know. So, as has been in the past, if there's any, I'm going to read the item, and they're all identified by the planning department as small or no impact. If anybody disagrees with that assessment, please stop me and we can talk about it. Number 1, will proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? Number 2, will proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Number 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Number 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? Yeah, sure. So the idea is this: if you, because you're new, we have to go through all this. Okay, sure. Environmental assessment. Planning board gives, planning policy gives us their impression of minimal impact. Yes. I'm reading the question, and if any board member says that, well, wait, I think this, for example, will the proposed action impair the character or qualities of the existing community? If somebody on any member of the board thinks that it is more than just a no or small impact, then say, oh, let's start.
Well, my question is a general question, and it was brought up last time, and it was about the diesel or propane at the backup generator at the site, correct?
Okay, right.
Is that addressed in these 11, or is that a separate issue entirely?
Well, I think the issue is, please tell me if I get this wrong, but I think that the issue is if the diesel generator would have an impact, which is one of the ones that's listed on here, then this is the time to talk.
Right, I agree. Like these are kind of like 4 categories, but the things like the diesel thing would fall within these. So.
But to be clear, Michael, this is part of the secret process, so we either have to make a positive declaration or a negative declaration. If we make a positive declaration, they've got to give an environmental impact statement, which is a much deeper look.
Sure,
So we could, I'm sorry, we could make a negative declaration and accept these and still prefer the program over it.
I think. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
We could also,
You can also say moderate to large impact on one item and it doesn't trigger an environmental impact.
Not unless.
So we can totally talk about details as part of a potential approval or not.
right, very good, thank you.
But Michael, if you felt that right now we have an application that says diesel generator, that hasn't been changed.
Mhm.
We don't have.
That's
any-
correct.
we don't have
That was a
any-
question from last week, so.
Yes, I was gonna ask, so that's still diesel.
If they're still looking into it, I don't have an answer.
So I wouldn't object to us, well, which we wanted, but given the fact that they have not yet changed the application approach, I would put moderate to large impact may occur if they use diesel.
Well, let's go line by line. So which one you want?
There you go.
Yeah, that would probably be number 9.
I'm sorry?
Number 9 would
We're
probably.
going on number 9? Yes. Well, amazing. All right, so, well, but it could be an impact on the existing community, to the extent that there's a noise impact. That,
Well, they already submitted a noise report that demonstrated that they're well below the required, minimum or maximum, noise levels at the property line or a nearby residence. So again, the generator in the compound's about 280 feet from the nearest residence. So, but they have that full noise report, which was part of the discussion last week. So we find that adequate. It more than meets the noise standards. So.
Well, the truth is we want this to be accurate of how we feel, but if we check the other box and still make a negative declaration.
yeah, you can still.
It's allowable.
We know, I know, I'm just saying it's not.
And we can still talk about it and try to ameliorate that.
Yeah.
We'll try to gap to ameliorate the impact. The idea here is that if there's an issue, like the generator, and you think that it falls into whatever category, if it's among these 11, then, like I say, we'll stop the presses and, we can talk about it.
Thank you.
So I'll pick up on number 3, just to give you a chance. Last chance. Will the proposed action impair? You want number 4? 3?
Yeah, it was.
I'll roll back a little bit. I'll do it for Ann. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Yes?
I would vote there on 3 that it'll change the character. That's been it used to be a farm, now it's a big Girl Scout camp, and we're gonna put a 200 foot tower in the middle.
Maybe 5.
No, it goes 200 with the tip of the end. So I would say just to keep the cell companies on their toes, that we consider that a moderate to large impact. That would be I don't believe we need an EIS here, but I do believe it would be good. And I also agree with Michael, though. Unless they're able to change to propane, I think, and then maybe we'll try to mitigate those in the approval.
Okay. Anybody else have an opinion on that?
I would go with moderate on this one too.
No. 2 from
Why
mine.
would, if someone wants to change, why would this vote? Unless there's discussion.
No, I want to give an opportunity to discussion. If anyone wants to add anything, we can just roll. All right. So those who say mine, no, Sharon?
Oh, I think I'm more leaning towards 9 being moderate, like more of the natural resources,
So
yeah.
deal with it at number 9, you
Yeah.
say? In terms of number 3, is where we stop.
I'll go with mine.
You vote for moderate?
Okay.
2, 3,
No, we're small.
you know, small, 1, 2,
No
3,
small.
no small,
No, small.
no small, that's 3, 3, moderate. 4 to 3.
All right.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of the critical environmental area? Nothing. Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect the existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Anyone? 7 is A and B. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? Anyone?
But there we're getting into the diesel because there are private wells. And if the diesel fuel gets into groundwater, those wells could be impacted.
If that's our standard though,
You
I
know,
mean,
we're trying to avoid it.
for moderate impact, it's hard to not check that box a lot of times
Yeah, well,
on projects. I'm just saying.
if you do diesel, you deserve it, check.
But aren't we trying to get it so that does not go into the water? Like we're having them do these double containers and I mean,
No, but-
the expectation is that it's not gonna go into the water.
But, well, that's what they said on Long Island for many years, and it
Right,
ended up in
but
the
I
water.
think it's.
Well, we
Things
had,
haven't-
You have to have like, I think some kind of basis.
well, we had our expert here say that putting roofs over the containment, basically concrete containment walls that fill with leaves and water, they can erode the steel tank. So we do not have an endorsement that these steel tanks are the best way to go. And the town is switching all of its tanks to propane. So I think we have an example.
Well, I think, but to be clear, I think what he was saying was it's better to rely on the tank as it's designed as opposed to putting extra measures in. He did say he switched to propane, but it's because he didn't want to deal with the regulations. He was, I think, pro tank with a double wall without the added.
Without a containment.
Yes, because he was saying the containment backwards. That's what was why I was saying.
Well, the county requires containment on
Well, no,
a certain size because it's a belt and suspenders to keep liquid hazardous materials out of the ground.
Well, he's in for containment, just not the roof part.
No, the tanks themselves are designed to meet the county standards. It's the third layer that he said Nassau County does. I have no idea if that's true, that we're talking about doing, that he was taking sort of.
You mean like the concrete base?
Yes, yes. He's saying the tanks themselves are designed to meet the county standards. Anything beyond that might backfire. That's how I understand it now.
Right, but I think what Randy's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that both options, without the added roof and third method of containment, or with it, you still have problems. If you put that at the third method, you have a problem with the water accumulating and whatever. If you don't do it, then you're exposed to the leakage that might occur if the tanks leak. So either way, you're not 100% sure it's not going to leak. So a better method would be the propane. They're not suggesting propane, so therefore it's not totally out of the question not to choose moderate on this one.
May occur.
May occur.
May occur, right.
Well, let's take.
Well, it doesn't say
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it says
May,
moderate.
top,
to
no,
large,
small.
may.
Oh, man, right, yeah, gotcha.
For those who want to keep it as no or small impact. Two, three. Ed, you're gonna do your change, okay, all right, all those to change it to moderate to large impact? 1, 2, 3,
I'm no small impact.
you
And
want,
I do think, I want to say one more time, I think as we do this, we should just make sure that we're consistent with how we do these things. Because,
because now we have it every
you
time.
know, it doesn't matter what the project is, it's what the impact is.
Well, you're not going to be consistent if you get new information that changes your mind.
I'll just leave that, well, I just want to say it, you know, on the record. I mean, of course, new information change your mind. I'm just saying, if we don't like the project or we think they have an alternative, to me, it's what the impact on the environment is. So if we're talking about other projects with similar diesel, I just think we can back ourselves into a corner here. But that's my point.
All right, so number 7, it's 4-3 to continue as no or small impact. Number 7 on private waters. Number 7B, proposed action impact existing public or private wastewater treatment facilities. All right. Number 8, will proposed action impair the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources. One.
It's small.
Well,
Aesthetic resources.
At least in the renderings I saw, I didn't see a huge.
I think
You know, community character, I think takes care of that. Yeah.
That's where I voted with. All right, well, all right, so was there a vote on that, a change on that one? Yeah.
I would vote for a moderate there for the same reason, but I don't think there's a majority.
Groundswell of support. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? Anyone?
Yeah.
Well, that's the one that I think, if you monitor, it says, will the proposed action result in such?
As proposed, I think there is
Yeah.
potential for the diesel, if they go with the diesel option.
Yeah, I would go with moderate.
Well, this is moderate.
Yeah, I'll go there.
3, 4. Five.
I'm my hands down.
You're down on that? 6 to 1. Okay. Number 10, will proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Anyone? No? Okay. And finally, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? Anyone? Okay. Very well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, do I need
Does a member of the public wish to speak on this? You can suggest them.
very much?
You're gonna make me use the clock here.
Richard Whalen, I'm an attorney. I represent residents in the Talmadge Farm area. We and a lot of other people, I think in Springs, would like to see this cell tower built. The discussion that you just went through is a very technical discussion that leads to whether or not you are going to require an environmental impact statement. It goes without saying that if you require an environmental impact statement, it's going to take a lot longer for this cell tower to be built. When you check the box moderate or large, and I didn't create the form, the form says whether or not a particular impact may have a particular issue here, may have a moderate to large impact. If you check that box and you say that a particular item in this project may have a large adverse environmental impact, you're requiring an environmental impact statement. That's what you're doing. So I think you have to distinguish. You're talking about whether or not you want, propane versus oil here, diesel fuel. Those are things you could work on in the site plan project. Diesel fuel is commonly used in residences and businesses throughout East Hampton town. I don't think you do an environmental impact statement over whether or not they're using diesel fuel. So I just want to caution you, if you check any of the boxes that might say may have a large environmental impact, you're going to be required to do an environmental impact statement on this. My clients are not in favor of that. I don't think most people in Springs are. That's my comment.
Thank you. For the record, Lucia Chiocchio on behalf of American Tower.
I thank you for your support, but I don't necessarily agree. You can issue a neg deck, even if you feel that there's one or two issues here that you felt may have a significant adverse impact, and that's something that you would flesh out through the process. So I would say that you can still support a neg deck, understanding that there are things that are going to be fleshed out through the site plan process. It doesn't rise to a level of an EIS, the issues that you're discussing.
Correct.
Moderator.
Yeah, correct. Well, it sure seems like we ought to get the advance.
Yeah, I'm actually not positive on this. I thought the same as you, but I may be wrong on that. I mean, obviously, if you marked most of these of having a large impact, it would obviously need an EIS. But I thought one or two, I didn't realize that is in effect saying that, you decking it.
I've been involved in multiple reviews that have had moderate to large impacts and not involved environmental impact statements. None of those went to court, so that was not challenged.
There is that advantage, and we don't have to worry about it.
The other thing to consider is
your planning department did put together, obviously for the part 3, a pretty comprehensive review and analysis of what the potential impacts would be and why they don't rise to a level of an EIS. The need for needs.
Have to change too if we're changing the boxes. The explanations.
Not really. Each one of those, the diesel generator specifically is referenced in the body of the Part 3 document. Again, this has come up before. The boxes, although certainly they're important to your determination of significance, the body of the Part 3, which is 7 pages attached to this, details the planning board's process thus far, all the documents that were submitted, why those documents have demonstrated to you that you would be making a negative declaration. So that's really the reasoning. I concur that I don't believe that it's an automatic trigger that if you check one box, moderate to large, that requires an environmental impact statement. I have SECRA in front of me here on the screen. It's actually sort of a reverse of that. It's if you are going to require an environmental impact statement, you need to identify that there might be one moderate to large or significant impact. So it's sort of the opposite.
So we have to pause decking first, and then
No, if you are going to make a positive declaration,
then we got to find out the reasons why on the EAF that we are pause decking. But
yes,
it's the cart, but it's the cart before the horse. And the cart in this case is this, and the horse is the EIS.
Yes. But yes, you can find more than one moderate to large impact. Specifically, the generator was addressed in the body of the EAF. We mentioned that the applicants are looking into propane. It's something that, said earlier that after the public comment period, if you feel that there are conditions that need to be imposed, whatever they may be, whether it's that they use propane or there's some kind of extra mitigation of potential leaks of that diesel generator, that's something you can still do. I will say that, based on what Eddie Schnell said at the last meeting, and my understanding, certainly we prefer propane and can't spill, but you are talking about one diesel generator on a very large property here. We have multiple other facilities, wireless facilities, and other types of facilities throughout the town that use diesel generators. They're required to be registered with the county health department. I don't see the mere existence of a diesel generator as their backup emergency generator as presenting a moderate to large potential impact to the town. That being said, this is the board's document, so however the board feels. But I would say that in the body of this document, it certainly, we didn't omit referencing it. It's referenced in there. And we mentioned that, we don't feel it comes to the level of moderate to large, and that additional mitigation will be considered by the planning board during the process. And you might very well come out of the public hearing with a condition that they're required to use propane or some other mitigation.
What you just said, I think, is an important part, because in the body, and I read the body, you say it's, no potential for a moderate to large impact but if we're changing the box, I think we've got to change that language because they're not consistent with each other. I mean, it's a small change, but because you talk about all the other potential problems, it's just.
Yeah. Well, the other aspect of it is that the question itself is, will the proposed action impair the character or a quality of the existing community? And that is broader than just propane versus diesel.
For sure.
And so if a member of the board might vote for changing that from no to moderate, the fact that the applicant is required to change from diesel to propane might not impact the impact that member sees, and would continue to keep this as, in that member's view, a moderate impact of the overall project. Correct?
Yeah.
Eric, one thing though you didn't mention, which is that I believe when Eddie Schnell spoke to us, he said that on every opportunity they have on municipal tanks, they're switching to propane.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I think that's important.
I will say, just from, I don't want to misrepresent is, what he said from the board, but I know a large part of that, because I've had that conversation with him before, is that you need to, once you get over a certain volume on a particular property of liquid fuel, you need a permit under Article 12 of the health department. He doesn't want to have to deal with that.
That's exactly what he said. He was not taking a stance in terms of.
This is what I like. Because there is at least a question about the the trigger issue on the EIS. And because we're gonna, our next step is going to be to schedule a public hearing on this. At or before the public hearing, I'd like to get something from council confirming one way or the other, what the rules of the road are. And if we need to, no, it's an issue, it's an issue.
Well, I know, but however, we can't adopt the document tonight, schedule a public hearing, well, and then we change the document.
Yeah, I mean, you could adopt it with changes noted, for sure.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is if we're debating whether we can have those boxes checked or not,
Well,
I think we can't proceed tonight to schedule a public hearing.
we can schedule a public hearing, and if we find from council at the next meeting, if we find out from council at the next meeting that in fact we went down the wrong road, then it'll mean a new resolution scheduling public hearing. It'll mean a delay of a week or so.
Well, but we just say we changed our mind because, geez, seems really hard to check that box and be like, oh, we didn't know that's what it meant. Now we want to change our opinion about it because of that. It's either a moderate to large impact or it's not. I mean, look, I might be a minority here. I think we're holding the can of worms.
Is there any timeline or update from the applicant about the question of the propane or diesel?
I would anticipate within the next week. I know working on it. I followed up again today. It's one of those things where, as I said last week, propane's not something that they typically install, right? They install diesel, given that they have thousands of sites throughout the United States. They work with certain vendors. So it's a matter of, okay, who's going to be the vendor? How do we do this? It's more than just one or two people making this decision. So and they understand the urgency of it.
That's the police department tank guy.
Yeah, yeah.
No, he does it.
Yeah, it's not so much local, it's more of a national question for them.
Seems like that's what you have to do if there's an open question. But I'm not in favor of that.
And I've advised as your planner has that it can be a condition that they'll have to comply with. So it behooves them to figure that out sooner rather than later.
Good.
Well,
I think it's important that we make it a condition. Otherwise,
we're not there yet. The question is whether or not we approve the EAF and run the risk that there's an EIS that we should be.
I think that's.
I don't think so. I feel
But we don't know for certain at this moment.
But you know what? On just on sort of a reasonable level.
How have we done this? So.
I think if first of all, I don't believe that one moderate impact compels
Or two.
to find and that too. It doesn't come.
Harry, could you read the section? Could you read that?
What
The one the cart before the horse. Could you read that out loud?
So, determination of significance from SECRA. The lead agency must determine the significance of any type 1 or unlisted, this is unlisted, action in writing in accordance with this section. Subsection 1 of this is to require an environmental impact statement for the proposed action. The lead agency must determine that the action may include the potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact. So in other words,
read that again.
yes, to require an environmental impact statement for a proposed action, the lead agency must determine that the action may include the potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact.
So what that says is that if we're going to require the EIS, it must have,
Yeah, it doesn't say if you find one, you must require an EIS. It says if you're going to require an EIS, you must find at least one.
If a project may have a significant adverse environmental impact statement, the secret standard is very clear, you have to require an EIS.
I want council.
I disagree.
Well, we can't.
That might be true in a type 1 action, Rick.
Same standard.
Yeah, it is the same standard from the same code section. I mean,
I also think that maybe the issue here is what should be considered moderate to large,
Yeah, well,
I mean,
that's
most
exactly
people
what I was
look
just
at
going to get at.
Moderate to large, they don't
But
confront
you
the
see,
issue.
again, it's not just about generators necessarily, it's about the whole.
I'm just saying, I think that.
And it's gonna vote, well, we have two items on
And
it.
it sure seems like it is about a generator.
And we have one that's, no, I can tell you, yeah, the question, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community, does not necessarily go only to the issue of what kind of generator.
Well, the question we're talking about now, I'm saying.
But the other one,
No, but that question was clearly
see,
different.
this is the problem, okay? If we delay this a week, so we get council's opinion as to whether or not we're triggering an EIS, then we're gonna delay it a week. And it means one more week of lousy cell service in Springs, okay? That's what it really boils down to. Now, we as a planning board can live with the opprobrium which will follow as a result of lousy cell service in Springs continuing for one extra week, and also the inconvenience to the applicants. Then that's what we have to do, unless we, in my opinion, it's what we have to do, if we want to make sure that we're on solid legal ground. Now, there's two other points to this. Number one is the solid legal ground. We need to have that. And number two is, it could, at least to the extent that it's related to the generator, if the applicant can get us an answer in a week, then they're only dealing with it for a week. So that's my take on it. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the EAF as per our vote, that we check two, if we agree to two moderate to large impacts, that we go ahead and vote that, accept the negative declaration now. That's my motion.
But you see, the question is whether you can do that. No, it's not a matter of not voting for it. It's a matter, it's a matter of are we voting for something that's legally inappropriate? That's the question.
And we're going solely based on one attorney who's representing owners, opposing, or supporting. Sorry, that's not true. I can say the record here is that we have done this many times. And so if we're wrong on the law here, we've been wrong for many applications. And I don't think that's the case. I would say many applications and many attorneys.
Let me say this.
That represented us to doing that.
I'm comfortable with what I just heard.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the idea that, contrary to what we heard from counsel, whose opinion I do respect, that it's the decision to have the EIS that requires us to find. It's not that it's the finding of the moderate impact that requires the EIS, at least based on it as it was just read to me. Now, that's what I hear.
I agree.
Now, okay, if the board is willing to go along with that analysis, and again, I'm not saying it as a lawyer, although everything in the world filters through my lawyer brain, but I'm not saying it as a lawyer, I'm saying it as a person who heard the verbiage that was stated by.
I'm saying that didn't speak to our issue, it spoke to a related issue.
No, isn't it this? Eric?
Yeah.
To this.
No, but what I'm saying is, it was saying in order to, I mean, it was speaking to if we want to make require EIS, we have to do that. That's a separate issue than what we're talking about, whether by checking moderate to large, that requires us to do it. It just doesn't address the issue we're talking about.
Can I just add?
That's not how I guess. I see it, it says that if if we're going to find EIS required, we must have
Well, that's
moderate.
exactly what it said, but that's a different issue than
No,
what we're talking
I
about.
think what he is saying, it's possible to have that.
Yes.
And there could be another, I'm saying, there could be another clause that says, if you check moderate, if you check yes to moderate, on one or two, then you must.
Yeah, those things are consistent.
No,
You might want to.
Could Tina read something from the DEC guidebook regarding secrets?
step up to
Yeah. Hello, everyone, Tina.
So the DEC issues what they call EAF workbooks that provide instructions to agencies and applicants for how they're to use the EAF forms. Regarding the instructions for Part 2, it says if you checked moderate to large impact may occur for any question in Part 2, then each of these will need evaluation in Part 3, right? So as Eric explained, that's already been done. The negative declaration has reviewed each. Part 3 will help the reviewing agency decide if the impacts identified are significant. or whether or not to require an environmental impact statement, right? So there's two steps. Is it moderate to large, yes or no? Then is it significant, right? So the significant is what triggers the EIS process. The moderate to large signals to the decision-making body, they need to consider the significance of that.
The second level of analysis right now.
Not necessarily, if Eric's already explained the impacts associated with these matters.
But Lou just said, if we agree that it's not significant,
Precisely.
then there is no EIS required.
Correct. Right. That's the point.
All right, in that case, Eric, is
Mitigation,
it,
maybe.
but that's down
Right.
the road. Eric, is it significant?
No, and that's the way this document was prepared.
What we did was what we accomplished is that we're not gonna have a legal challenge down the road. Whether they do, they're gonna get thrown out of court.
We can adopt this.
The EIS, well, the question is it significant?
No, I don't believe so. And that is the way the document was
We
prepared.
all read part 3 and we agree with the conclusion.
Of part three, precise.
By checking off those boxes, we do not counter what was said in part.
That is precisely true. Yeah. Agreed. Good. In that case,
We can move forward.
we can now move forward with. No, it's fine. We could just, you think this is easy?
No,
I think it's easier than we're making.
No, it's like, you know what? No, what we're doing is we're making sure that a significant action is being taken by this town is done according to the law. That's what we do. And if it takes a couple of go-rounds to get it right, then that's what it takes.
Yeah, and in the end, and I advise my clients this way, seeker requires you to take a hard look, right? And that's why you had that part 3 to support whatever finding you made, to support a neg deck, or if you had made a pos deck to support that.
Just know that, that issue of diesel versus propane is gonna come up.
Oh, yeah,
If I have to predict. Okay.
I think I got it.
Although, I don't want to.
This is a site plan and a special permit. So we have.
all we're doing right now is trying to accept this.
Actually, we are accepting, anyone saying we're not accepting it, we're all.
Well, I do think that this language in the part 3 has to be consistent. Part 3, he says, is not a moderate, it won't be a moderate to large impact.
Well, I don't necessarily say that.
We would say it may be,
No,
but
you
it's
say
not
that the board,
significant.
the board found that it's not significant.
As Tina was indicating, reading that secret workbook, significant is a different term than moderate to
Yeah, I
large.
just don't remember your exact language. We
I
should
have
be
it
sure
in front
that.
of me. If you want me to read it, I will.
So you'll
I don't believe I need to amend it.
Okay, right? They
Yeah.
they can fix part 3.
Well, I don't believe I need to amend it. I can read you verbatim. I have it in front of me. I want to read you what I wrote.
Why don't you do that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end is a conclusion that we've determined that, there's not a potential for a significant adverse impact, which is the heart of a negative or, the opposite being a positive declaration. But there's no reference here to it being moderate to large or no to small.
We go past.
Yeah, I mean, I'll read you the paragraph right here. And by the way, I'll just reiterate that I don't think the mere presence of a diesel generator on a 172-acre property that's 40 feet above the groundwater level presents a moderate to large impact, but this is your document. But anyway, verbatim from the EAF Part 3.
May.
Well, I have my own caveat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Anyway, the new diesel generator is proposed to contain a double-line self-contained fuel tank situated on a concrete pad. The planning board has requested that the applicants consider utilizing a propane generator or other fuel source that is non-liquid and will not spill. The applicants have stated that they will look into the feasibility of this design and or providing additional measures to contain spills. So there's no mention in there to it being no or small, moderate to large. It's basically identifying what they proposed, which is a double-line self-contained diesel generator. And pays reference to the fact that the board, as mitigation down the road, may be requiring an alternative fuel source or alternative mitigation measures. So I think that covers you pretty fine.
Yeah, I think it's true. We all agree to adopt the EAF.
Yes.
As
As with these two changes.
right, with the changes. Okay, very good. Now, we have a.
We have to
We have to
formally
make
do
a
that.
motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yours.
Yeah, I don't think those changes were necessary, but I'm not, I move to make a negative declaration.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of that? Aye.
And I guess you should make a note, as amended, with those
As
two
amended.
questions
As
being
amended,
changed to,
yes.
yeah. As amended,
There
yeah.
you go. Seconded.
And because we introduced that.
Yeah.
I think you sets us up there for asking for mitigation down the road.
That's it. All right, now, as long as we still have that matter in front of us, we do have a resolution, don't we? Yes. So, Ian, this is you.
Yeah. In the matter of the application of American Tower at 103 Flagy Road, site plan special permit, scheduled public hearing for Wednesday, October 19th, 2022 at 7 PM. Or soon thereafter, this matter may be heard. I've read the resolution, move for its adoption.
Good second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass, 7-0.
Thank you for
There
your
you go.
time this evening.
Thank you. Okay, and now on to yum things, the cookery. That's, Will, you're gonna do that? You're here for the applicant?
Yeah, I am the applicant. I'm the one.
And, Ian, that's you again.
So do you want me up here again at the lectern?
Well, first, Will
Oh,
will
okay,
go
Will's
first,
gonna do it first.
then you'll have an opportunity to be heard, and then the board will be, taking the applicant.
So basically, relax.
Okay, as you can see, this was an application to make alterations to an existing structure in order to accommodate the on-site bakery and marketplace, and the addition of a rear awning, side trellis, outdoor seating, dumpster, parking, and a detached garage. This application was reviewed by the planning board at its meeting on July 13th, 2022. The applicant subsequently met with the planning department to discuss how to best address the outstanding issues as outlined in the original review. These included resubmitting in order to not expand the roof line of the building due to that being prohibited because the bakery building as is a non-conforming use. To reorient the parkings to simplify the layout and reduce the amount of pavement for the proposed driveway. To add one ADA compliant parking spot with an accessible route to the bakery's entrance. To either remove or submit a variance application for the proposed patio compromising the already non-conforming existing setbacks and to make sure the proposed dumpster location matched is on both the proposed survey and plans. The applicant has now submitted a revised version of the survey that includes the proposed freezers under a separate existing canopy, separating it from the main structure. Thus, the application no longer includes an expansion of the roof line and it will not violate the requirements for non-conforming use. It was determined in the prior review that the applicant's originally proposed parking meets the parking requirements for both the residents and the bakery, aside from the fire marshal's comments requiring an ADA compliant handicap space. However, the department also recommended the arrangement of parking be modified to simplify the layout and reduce the amount of pavement for the proposed driveway, including shifting the parking to 90 degrees, having it primarily face the bakery building, having a turnaround space at the end of the parking lot to restrict the driveway to one side of the bakery, and adding a plant barrier to the other side to separate the bakery from the residential portion of the property. The applicant has submitted a revised survey that does indeed utilize some of these recommendations by the planning department, with the proposed parking now being oriented at a 90-degree angle from the bakery, and a turnaround added to the end of the parking lot, with the proposed driveway no longer looping around to the other side of the property. However, the proposed parking still faces the neighboring property rather than the bakery building, which should be noted that there are already existing plant and fence barriers between the two properties. The board should discuss those proposed changes with the applicant and should determine whether further changes to the plan for the parking driveway are necessary. The fire marshal did previously review the project plans and determined that it was not ADA compliant and they needed to add an ADA compliant space. An ADA compliant handicap spot has been added to the plans and proposed survey and is the spot with the closest proximity to the entrance. The planning department therefore finds this issue addressed, though as of this date, the fire marshal has not yet reviewed the entrances for ADA compliance. As noted on the property card, the two existing primary structures on site, the residence and the bakery, were built prior to the adoption of current zoning regulations, and thus they are grandfathered in despite not meeting typical setback requirements for a Zone B residence property. The applicant was originally proposing to add a patio to the existing bakery that would compromise the setbacks even further, which would require a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The patio has not been removed from the plans, and thus the current setbacks will not be further compromised. There was originally a slight discrepancy between the different submitted surveys and plans as to the location of the proposed dumpster. On the revised plans, this discrepancy has now been resolved and the proposed dumpster is in the same location on both the submitted survey and plans. However, the board should discuss the proposed location of the dumpster with the applicant, as the location of the present enclosure is at 11 feet from the property line, which is only 1 foot more than the required 10-foot rear yard setback for accessory structures. It meets the code requirements, but the adjoining properties are residential, which should be considered during the discussion. In conclusion, the planning board should discuss with the applicant the proposed changes to parking and driveway and determine whether they are satisfactorily streamlined in line with the initial review. They should also discuss the proposed location of the dumpster enclosure with the applicant and whether it should be relocated. If all these matters are resolved, the applicant can be deemed complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing once the fire marshal has reviewed the ADA accessibility.
Next, well, question,
Yeah, it's about the report.
specifically, and it could be brief, this facility used to have some outdoor seating. And I'm wondering, could they add outdoor seating, or would that trigger a expansion of pre-existing use? Well, anyway, it's a question in the air, just leave it there.
Well, I can answer it. I mean, there was.
Well, you have, why don't you?
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, in terms of that question, there was always outdoor patio there on the side. What Will was talking about was in the front area, which was a mistake. That was never supposed to be there in the first place. But the side has always had a patio there. And that's, so we're still using it as a patio.
Good. For customers or for?
For customers, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, what am I supposed to say?
Well, if you want to say anything.
Oh, no, I know. I don't want to say anything. I will use it up to you guys.
We'll take off.
Okay, so shall I sit down then?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, I think the planning department wrote a great memo last time, illustrating some of the potential problems with a pre-existing non-conforming building like this. You came back and changed almost everything that they asked and the board asked for. So I think this is better. I guess I got a question for you, which is the parking. You met a lot of you answered a lot of questions, but the parking is still pointing against the neighboring property as opposed to against the bakery itself.
Correct.
Which I think the concern by the planning department probably was mostly headlights. I know you're I think a daytime spot, but also people then have to cross over the lane of traffic, which is two-way now, because there's no longer the circle. So is there an objection to having parking?
Yes, I believe that the fire department does not want cars parked up against.
Excuse me, can they go back to the podium, please?
Thank you.
It's a little scary, that. What was I saying? Yes, as far as I understand, that the fire department, the fire marshal prefers not to have cars, so it could be a problem if there's ever a fire. So they prefer to have the parking away from the building.
Does the planning department have any opinion about
Yeah,
that?
I don't,
Well,
Yeah, we just want to call up the aerial for you. But I'll allow the applicant to finish.
No, I mean, that's,
well, I guess
that's as far as I know.
About is the parking. I think that the planning department had recommended facing the bakery, probably in large part for lights, but also you have to cross the two lanes of traffic then to enter. The applicant saying that the fire department, fire marshal preferred it to be not on the building. Is that
correct or not?
Yeah, I don't know that for sure, but Will is calling up the aerial here. May I thank?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
We brought it up really more as a consideration for the board of what the best layout would be. There, as you'll see on the aerial, although we'll have to zoom in a little bit, there is an existing 6-foot stockade fence along that property boundary, as well as a hedgerow there. So I don't know that the headlights are going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm not super concerned about that, but I do think having to cross, we stopped the loop, so now there's two-way traffic and people have to cross that every time they.
Yeah, we feel it would be a superior layout to have it close to the building, but I don't know that it's like a make or break kind of aspect of the site plan.
Besides the fire marshal, are there any other objections?
No, I'm fine. Listen, if you guys want to prefer
I don't feel
that,
super
I'm
strong,
fine.
but
I mean,
cooking next to cars.
if you got fire outside the building, you got problems. She's a better cook than that, for sure. Well, so I think maybe that's an open issue. I don't feel super strongly, but I think the whole point of the process here
just have a conversation to make sure that it's important to you if the planning department or the board feels it would be slightly better elsewhere. The dumpster, I don't know where else you put that. I think that is something we're very careful about.
Yeah.
We don't want noisy dumpster, being empty with neighbors there. But I don't know of a better spot. Does the planning department have a specific?
Yeah, not necessarily. We just wanted to flag it to your attention that, that is residential property, that borders there. But yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily a better spot. There might be, if we went back to the site plan, maybe sort of behind the building, you'll see there's a small area. But Will did, and it's tough to see, I apologize. Can you actually go to the other one that's up there? Yeah, that's probably easier to see. And if you could maybe reduce it, yeah. So, I mean, one thought was basically, you'll see the dumpsters proposed up in this corner. Again, it does meet setbacks, but there's a small area over here that maybe you could put it. Again, it's a bit of a congested site, so that might not be better, but that would at least be further away from the property line. So again, something that we don't have strong objection to. We just wanted to, bring up the conversation about the layout of, that's proposed.
But if it's in the upper corner, it's closer to a residence, right?
And that's correct, yeah.
Well, look. Can I say something? No. Well, I was just going to say, I'm going. She is there, the resident is there, but it's right at the end of her property line and her house is further down. And so, and then also the garbage guys, they come very early in the morning. We have a very, very early pickup because I can't have them coming during when people are parked there.
Well, that's the noise or.
Yeah, well, it's the noise, but it's also, it's not really bad. It's a very small dumpster. We're not talking about a big major dumpster. It's one of the smallest ones that they have. I don't know. Anywhere else, it's kind of nasty.
Well, look, I think that those are sort of two remaining issues, but I do think this is a complete application ready to schedule for public hearing. I think that, as we want to hear from the public.
Sure.
We then might change some things based on what we hear. Okay. If we ended up moving the dumpster, I think Eric is right. The place that would be moved would be towards the building, which might even be nice to have better access to it. I don't think that would require a new public hearing because it's an improvement for the neighbors, and so I don't think we get ourselves into trouble by making too many changes and having to redo the process. And frankly, I feel the same way about the cars. So I would be ready to move this forward to a public hearing. I don't know if everybody else is. Do you have any strong objections to that idea, Eric, that if we wanted to change the parking and have it on the building side of the fire marshal or move the dumpster, those aren't major changes that we would now notice? No. So I think the process can move forward. These are just, noted, these issues are something we're thinking about. We'll have to, once we hear from the public, sort of button them up.
Good for me.
Anyone else have anything they want to add to this?
Yeah, I don't see putting the dumpster in there. Isn't that a brick patio that you have to cross to pick it up?
Where?
Well, on the plan where you were.
Well, it doesn't matter. We don't know what the plan is for now.
I think it's fine the way it is.
So I have a question.
Well, I'd like to see where the house is actually, and that would be something that.
You could go back to the area.
Yeah, go to the area.
I think Will did reference it in the memo that it's a significant distance away.
But the house is.
Which house?
The one that you packed.
Here.
Yeah, you have it right here.
But where the cars are parked is my question, because I went there before we came here, and that house is like right at the property line.
Yeah.
There.
That house, yeah, the back of her house is. But may I come?
Yeah.
We're proposing in this area.
The dumpster.
Yeah, the dumpster. And then one of the reasons why is because it is an unsightly thing when it gets full. And I really didn't want people to see it when they pulled in. So at least when it's over there, you don't really see it as much.
So my question is, where do cars park now? Do they park facing the bakery, or do they sometimes?
They've done both. They've done both right now, right? Because we haven't designated it yet. So
historically, it's been facing the building, and the previous use, that's how people were used of the site.
That's what
people were used to parking into the building.
Yeah, when I started, I always.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Again, this is.
Yeah. I understand.
I think it was all the same to you. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, how was the fire marshal's, comments communicated to you or to anyone?
Well, he's been by a few times.
Okay, so it was
Yeah, I talked to
verbal.
him, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we talk. I mean, it's not, I mean, and it wasn't like set in stone. He
Remember,
said-
you gotta speak.
Oh, shit.
You're on TV.
Sorry, guys. Okay. Okay, so what was I saying? So, I mean, he just indicated, well, we were just talking about all of that. And he said, you know, normally we don't like to have cars close to the building in case there's a fire. It's very hard to get up there close to it for the firemen. That was a passing comment.
Okay.
So I didn't.
I would say this then, if you truly don't care, maybe we should get clarification from the fire department. It seems like everybody on the board at least prefers that, you know, the starting point that you're on the building.
It's so fun. I'm sorry, but because I mean, people sit out there, so I think it's terrible.
Well, so maybe there's another reason you don't want it. That's valid.
Yeah, that's kind of that for me personally. I hate it when cars come up and you're sitting there having lunch. I think that's just.
I'm a member who's fine with how it's drawn up, but I'm just concerned about that stockade fence and maybe, and there's overgrowth of, you're gonna have to cut some.
We did. We've cut a lot back there.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was.
But maybe even some sound attenuation in a new fence or something might.
A new fence, really?
Or sound attenuation is what I'm getting at.
What's that? I mean,
You
in
put like
terms of.
this foam in between a new fence to kind of mitigate the sound of cars and definitely block headlights.
During the day.
I know that, yeah, they're not open.
What are your hours of operation?
Well, it's going to be 6 a.m. to 4.
So dark at 6 a.m.
Well.
There's not gonna be daylight savings.
Oh, one other question. So is there a loop? Can I drive in and park and then go around this sort of this?
No,
No, you didn't. You asked
So
to change
this is
that.
what I'm looking at?
This is
Maybe that's an old one.
That's an old one.
What do you mean by loop? The circle, yes.
There is that.
But okay.
So when you pull out,
But I'm just, on this map that I'm looking at, the green line.
That was the original, maybe. Are you looking at the
I'm
original?
going on the website. I'm going on the website. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If you move the dumpster to the property line, what's going to be behind the dumpster? It's any kind of.
This is all.
It's 10 feet away.
This is all town land.
It's
all town, and it's empty. Is that what you're asking?
But there's an enclosure.
Pardon?
There's a dumpster enclosure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But that's how much setbacks, it's not a freestanding dumpsters, right?
Well, right this moment it is, but it's, of course, yeah. The plan is to hide that guy.
Yeah.
I like Ian's plan to move ahead with this public hearing and make small amendments.
Okay, so, anybody else have any objections to going forward?
No.
All right, so then we're either complete and ready for a public, we don't have a resolution. We have next week. We'll have a resolution on next week to schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
Public hearing will be held sometime in October or November, when. And just make sure that when you do schedule a public hearing, remember there are all kinds of notice requirements. Planning department will work with you on that, but you don't want to mix that up, because what happens is if you don't do it right, then we get here. Ian will read the public hearing announcement. I'll turn to council. I'll say, do we have jurisdiction? She'll say, no, they didn't do it right. In which case, everything's going to get delayed.
Okay, so who's going to help me with that?
Just
Okay, thank you, guys.
Just
Okay.
notifying your neighbors.
Just bear,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not getting rocket science, but it's science, but you know.
Okay, notify your
You got it.
It's written in the code how to do it.
Okay,
But what I'm saying is, make sure you do it right,
gotcha.
okay?
I will do my bloody best. I will. I promise. Thank you all very much.
Okay. And the last matter that we have on the site plan review is the East Hampton Tank and Equipment Building. Tina, that's yours as the applicant here on that? There you go, thank you, nice to meet you. All right, and Ed, that's yours? It is. Okay, so then we'll hear from the planning department first, and we'll hear from you, then the board will take it.
We also have two grid representatives here, Jim Clark and Jennifer Lundbeck, and I think for some of the things that you want to discuss, they might be.
When it's your turn, you can.
I can't
do
handle
whatever
it, they
you
will.
want. Exactly.
I'll zoom it in.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we're just calling up the site plan, but I'll get started. Thanks, Eric. The board last reviewed this project on July 27th. This is a minor site plan application for 3 Cove Hollow Road. It's an existing facility. National Grid operates there. The application is for the construction of 2 20,000-gallon water tanks and a 12 by 15 foot equipment building. So one of the major comments at the last board session, which I obviously wasn't here for, was that the applicant should provide more information with respect to the siting, the facilities, as well as the operations on site. So they have submitted, and if I said I can navigate to it, there's a detail that's been submitted that shows the proposed features a little bit more clearly. Then they're very kind of squished on that bit. Here, do you want to just, I could just, yeah, go in there and, thank you. So here's the detail, right? So here's the 2 new tanks and the equipment building, and this is the property's setback. For those of you who don't remember where this is adjacent to Cove Hollow Road near the end of Buell Lane extension, and the LIRR right of way is right up here. So we're to the south of that. So this red line is the facility's property line with LIRR, and here are the new features. And there's an existing fence to be replaced as well. The heights of the new building, the equipment building, and the 2 tanks are listed here. After the last planning board session where this was reviewed, the applicant submitted a response to comments document that followed the format of the board's discussion. So what I did in the memo is briefly summarize the information that the applicant submitted, and it's great they're here this evening to further expound on any remaining questions that weren't addressed in that document. So I'm going to go through those as a high-level overview, and then we can continue from there. The first question, all related to, excuse me, site operations and water and wastewater usage on site. The applicant's responses with respect to that indicate that the equipment building is not going to be manned to basically contain the equipment, and no further details were provided. I don't know if the details are available or applicable. It's just to really contain the new infrastructure on site. Regarding the use of water, the applicant indicated that the water is going to be injected into the combustion chamber in order to reduce NOx emissions on site. And from there, it turns to steam and goes out of the existing combustion chamber. So there is no effluent that is discharged as a result of this process. So that's kind of the first 2 questions were answered in that fashion. The third question was regarding solid and liquid byproducts. The applicant explains that the minerals from the water are going to be treated in this trailer. That's the facility that's going in the setback. They call it the demineralization trailer that has treatment media in the trailer that treats the water. The residues get caught by the residents that are in the trailer, and then those are trucked off site, I would assume, to a permanent facility somewhere, which we can ask more questions about that. They say that's probably going to happen once a year. Last time they spoke, there wasn't a lot of detail about the location of the trailer on site, so they did put that on the site plan for us, and it has been cited in the setback. It's about 10 feet from the property line where it should be 15. The planning board does have the authority to waive the setback if they so choose. The next set of questions the planning board asked was with respect to noise. And the applicant did answer that question in the first response to comments document, and they also submitted additional information on September 16th to further provide details because we still had kind of some remaining questions. So, you know, the question was, what are the noise generating materials on site and what would the impacts be? Their response was that the pumps are going to operate only when the turbine's operating. There's nothing, like no pumps going around the trailer. And that, you know, the equipment's all going to be in the equipment building, and the equipment building would serve to attenuate the noise. In the plans for the building, we did notice that there's louvers and doors and windows. So we were just kind of wondering, you know, will those be open or closed? And the applicant in the new information had just explained that National Grid has similar equipment elsewhere. They've taken measurements and there hasn't been an impact. They did not provide any quantitative details on that. So maybe that's something they can discuss with us this evening regarding, you know, what that equipment looks like at other sites and what the noise profile of it is. But, you know, obviously the building will provide some attenuation, and the equipment they did describe is electric, operated by electric motors, quieter in general. The next question the board had was lighting, and the response regarding lighting was that there's no lighting proposed, and there's none shown on the existing survey or the proposed site plan. So that was the questions. I'll just zoom out so you guys can see it to scale. The other things kind of held over from the first memo. This application is subject to ARB. The planning department feels it's complete enough. The planning board agrees to make the submission to ARB at this time. We just remind the board, as we did last time, that because it's a minor site plan application, the board does have the authority to waive the public hearing should they choose. And then just an administrative matter, the applicant has requested that the application name be changed to National Grid East Hampton Tanks and Equipment Building Site Plan. They have changed everything on all the plans submitted at this time, and so we're changing our files. And so the conclusion is that the questions have been largely addressed, and you know, we still bring the applicants here to answer additional questions on noise and site operations as they remain. And you know, we're ready to recommend a public hearing or you know, determine if it's to be waived.
Thanks very much for a very comprehensive report.
Just saying, I just want to mention one thing. It looks like in the packet, pages 2 and 4 were not included. I saw everybody shuffling like I was. I think it was just an error because it was printed double-sided, but just so that you have the full memo with the questions.
Oh, thank you. I have already made arrangements to know what precisely that first question is. Thank you. Okay. Is the applicant's usually heard on this?
Yes, I will just give a brief thing. I think one of the things that's important to note is that this is something that their new emissions regulations that East Hampton combustion turbines must achieve by May of 23. They do have, and they can speak a little more clearly on that, what the timeline is, but there is a timeline, as you can well imagine, for them to get this all built. Once they don't meet the May 23 date, then they will be out of compliance. So this isn't something they've chosen to do. This is a new emissions standard that they have to adhere to. I think they've currently got four other facilities on Long Island that are operating in this manner, and that they've already got these turbines going. This will be another one, and I think there's a couple more planned. So I think the biggest questions you had were about the noise, and I don't know if we've addressed that for you appropriately. The building will be pretty much largely closed. There's two 16 by 24 louvers that will be open in the summer months when the turbines are in operation. What was the other thing that you had asked about, Tina? The noise, and then, oh, the use of the building. The use of the building is really just to house this equipment, keep it from the elements, and there's no intention of personnel being in the buildings really at any time. There are manuals, or I guess there's stuff that they can operate outside the building. Is that correct? And maybe you'd want to hear from one of them who have more technical
I just have one question
information.
though. It doesn't meet setback, so is it just constrained or can you move it away from the setback line?
It's there because, did I not grab? Survey. Then they fall into the right of way.
Oh.
That they're supposed to stay out of, so that's pretty much why they put it
I'm
there.
sorry, is the shaded area is the right of way, right?
Yes.
So the tank is right above it. That's just to call everybody's attention to it. That's
the trailer.
The trailer.
The
Sorry,
trailer.
yeah.
It's only the trailer
that's the setback.
Right below the railroad. That's correct.
Is the railroad building the bicycle lanes there? Or not the railroad? Is there a bicycle lane or something in that area?
Not that I know.
We can only hope. There was the Southport bike path, I think does go through here. But there's no plans to construct it at this time. Maybe in the future.
Do you know if it's
up in the air, as it were?
Oh, it's a good question. North or south? Do you know where the plan shows north?
I think it's
Is it? What was the answer, Tina?
I think it's south. I whispered because I'm not positive, but.
Okay. I think you're right.
Sorry.
Whisper or not.
We can find out for you.
Yeah, that's the answer.
I mean, it plays into that.
So that raises the question, what is the distance then from the trailer to the tracks?
From the trailer to the tracks, we didn't mention, from the property line, it's about 10 feet. Yeah, so it is, so this red line here is the property line, here's the tracks. I think the right of way is about 60 feet, again, estimated.
Yeah, I think they were about 5 feet into the setback. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that.
And how do you transport the material or the water from the tank to the where it gets in or what?
Why don't I have either Jennifer or Jim, would you like to do that? Yeah, they do have it detailed in here, but then she can answer the question for you. Yes.
There's something on the plan that says replace existing fence. I think it's on the bigger.
I'm gonna go to that.
That was in place in kind to replace the existing fence. Is that correct, Jennifer?
In the United States, you need to come up.
Yeah, much more now.
And introduce yourself, please.
Jennifer Lundbeck is working on the project for NatGrid.
Welcome.
Okay, hello. Yeah, I guess I'll just answer the fence question first. So it would modify the existing fence line slightly just so that the new structures are within the fence line, so it's secure.
Is it a playground fence, razor wire top?
No, it's just a regular chain link fence.
But I'm wondering if noise-wise, maybe it could be, I'm just thinking, we have heard in the past from those neighbors to the south. And if you're going to be replacing the fence, we could talk about whether there's a better fence in terms of noise.
Let's do that when we have the board talking. Let's get a technical question right now.
Okay, yeah, I mean that the fence that would get replaced is along the north side of the property. I know the residential neighbors are more to the south and the west there.
It's just on the north, the fence that's going to be replaced.
Yes, that's correct.
It's only like these two sections here.
Yeah.
Right, and the equipment building's down here, and then there's a lot of residences.
So not the fence along the bottom.
When we're doing the discussion, if you could bring up the overhead.
Okay, sure.
We can know what we're talking about.
Is there a fence on the south side?
Yeah, there's pre-existing sound walls on the south side, as well as a little bit on the north around the diesel engines.
I see, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if those are depicted on the survey drawing.
Any other technical questions?
Well, you had the question though.
About, yes, your question.
Oh, the piping, okay. So you were asking about how the water gets from the DI trailer, the demineralizer trailer to the tanks?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that'll be, the piping will go underground underneath the existing asphalts.
So you have to install piping.
That's correct, yeah.
And how deep does that piping go?
That piping will go 2.5 feet down. It'll get blown out in the winter, so freezing is not a concern.
It should be shown on the plan. On the site.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This doesn't run in the winter, right?
No, this is just for the summer
extra.
months.
Yeah.
That's the NOx compliance regulations.
So that only happens twice a year or once a year, the transfer of the liquid through the pipes to the trailer?
So it would go from the trailer to the tanks. That would be whenever we need additional water in the tanks.
So are you asking with the demineralization?
No, I'm asking, doesn't the water go from the tank to the trailer to get demineralized or something?
Oh, no, the water goes through the trailer and then to the tanks.
What happens in the trailer?
So the water passes through a series of resin beds, which I'm not super familiar with the chemical composition of that, but what they do is they attract the minerals that are in the water so that the resulting water that comes out is purer than what came in. None of the minerals like really exit the trailer, they just stay inside, and then the trailer, when it's depleted, is picked up by the vendor and brought to their processing facility.
So is the water coming from a water main?
Yes.
Okay, that's where.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And then the whole trailer gets taken away at one point.
Yes.
Which you thought might be once a year.
Yeah, most years it'll be once a year, sometimes it's twice, just based on historical operation. That's the projected water use.
It's just a question. So the new emission standards that this is meant to help meet are town? Did you say it was a town standard or is it state?
New York State, yeah.
It's state.
It's part of that Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, I believe.
I assumed that.
If there's no other technical questions for the applicant, it's yours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for addressing the question so thoroughly. I appreciate that. I don't have an issue with the setback on the trailer. I think because we're up against the railroad here. I think we're fine. This sound attenuation issues are, I think, also fine. The one sort of remaining question for me is we have two 20,000 gallon tanks of water sitting here. I mean, you've had experience with these above ground tanks in other locations around Long Island, you said. But we just got done with a conversation about leaking, the potential for leaking diesel fuel. Water is obviously a different situation. However, 20,000 gallons is a lot. If the tanks should fail, there is a residence directly to the south of this, right? If this were a swimming pool in the town of East Hampton, we'd require dry wells for that, right? Obviously, a swimming pool is a different situation. There is an anticipation that you will empty it at some point. So that's the reason for that. But I am just curious about your experience with this or your feelings about the potential for failure of the water tanks. It's a lot of water.
Yeah, I can go back.
Yeah,
please go back up.
Yeah, so these are going to be fiberglass water tanks. We have a similar tank built to the same dimensions and specs at another site in Nassau County. The tanks have been there for roughly a little over 20 years now without any issue. And before the tanks will be released from the manufacturing facility, they have to undergo a hydro test. So they have to be proven that they hold water before we'll accept them.
Is it one single layer of fiberglass? Within a container of some sort?
It's the exact plans. Yeah, built to certain standards. I can't remember the exact thickness of the walls.
But beyond that, I mean, is it any kind of? Does it lay directly in the ground as a?
Oh, it'll be on a concrete foundation. Yeah, sorry.
So in the winter, when it might freeze, will it be empty?
It'll be empty.
You'll basically have a dry tank for.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll be drained very slowly. We do that at other sites that are on winter.
All right, so it is drained on site.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, that'd be a heck of a thing to 20,000 tank out or any of that.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't lift the whole tank.
Well, yeah, no, I'm saying the drainage has to be.
Well, drained into what?
Well, that's what I'm
Into a
asking.
truck.
I'm saying, as opposed to, yeah, you're assuming she's saying into a truck as opposed to
How are you draining, where is the drain, I guess that'd be a good question. Where does the draining water, where does that water go?
Okay, yeah, it would be drained to the ground. It would be drained slowly, like we would not drain it at a flow rate that would like scour the ground or like do any damage to the existing site or flood anything, like if it.
And it's water, just plain old.
Yeah, it's just plain water.
Straight
No
from the
chemicals,
main
nothing, yeah.
water in that tank. Okay,
Well, it's
a
demineralized water, but yeah.
And it goes into a dry well or?
It doesn't.
I think there's some sort of drain nearby by the combustion turbine. I don't know the exact spec of it.
So if you want to look at this, I don't remember seeing anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's marked out on the survey.
Probably be good for us to also see the dry well drain on the plan.
Assuming there is one.
Yeah, there isn't a dry well apparently.
I think I don't think they're draining it to the surface.
It sounds like they are.
Yeah, I mean, I looked, here's catch basins.
What is the drain of 20,000?
I didn't see any dry wells.
Yeah, that's sort of the size of an average swimming pool. 20,000.
My pool's 36,000, 18 by 36 feet. And that's 36,000 approximately. Yeah, 36,000 gallons.
It'd be nice to know more about this.
Okay, yeah, but we do drain the tanks at other sites too. We know to drain it slowly. We know not to let the water just sit there and pool up.
You know, it's not far from an area that is notoriously bad for flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might want to bear that in mind.
Right, of course.
Anyone who lives up near there knows.
So my question is, so the source of the water is local, right? You fill the two tanks with 20,000 gallons each, and then through the demineralization process and through these tubes, it goes to the trailer. How much water, or what is in the trailer? What are you taking away? Is it like minerals?
Yeah, the minerals.
But is it like 5,000 gallons of heavily mineralized water?
No, just the filters are in the trailer.
Just the filters?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, just those resin.
And somewhere else, those filters are disposed of.
Yeah, I think they're actually like recharged somehow so that they can be reused.
That doesn't happen anywhere in the town of East
No, it doesn't. They're taken away.
So how can we get to a better understanding of this drainage issue?
Well, I think it's important. Yeah, I don't drain my pool all the way in the winter.
No, I mean, people rarely do.
So that's why you don't do that.
Right.
You don't want to do a big.
But you're proposing to drain 40,000 gallons of water slowly in the off season.
Yes.
Before it freezes.
Yes, with enough preparation before we hit the freezing weather and we want the water out.
What question remains for you, and how do you want it addressed?
Well, you know,
and one last, in relation to the public hearing and the whole process that, you know, we're following right now. Do you want more information before this can be?
Yeah, I mean, we did ask this question last time too. You know, were there going to be dry wells? Because we anticipated that this was going to, we're going to do some. I didn't know, frankly, it was all, but of course it makes sense. It would be all the water would be drained in the winter. I think it would be helpful, and I may be alone in this, I think it would be helpful to really understand more about that process. I mean, just letting 40,000 gallons of water be drained out of these tanks
between September and December.
Right next to residences in an area that we know is sort of prone to flooding anyway. It just seems to me we should know a little bit more about what can be done to kind of mitigate the impacts of that.
Well, right? At least I think we should show the piping to the trailer and also the dry wells are going to drain. Usually we have dry wells on the plant.
if this is in fact going in the drywall. I mean,
But there is no driveway.
so it's just gonna be drained to the surface.
I feel like I've seen a drainage grate on site. I don't know exactly what.
You may
it goes
have,
to.
there may be an answer to this, it's
Yeah.
fairly simple, but I think we'd just like to know what it is.
Yeah, based on my knowledge of the site, I can't answer the question at the moment.
Yeah, I think that it's important, as you're saying this, I'm becoming persuaded, it's, we need to know this, because it is, if you could bring back up the, I know there's only one house that's immediately nearby, but if you draw back on that photo, you'll see that there are many houses not very far from there.
Right.
And plus, there's a fairly active commercial site a little bit.
On the other side of the track.
Side of the track. But there, you see all those houses?
There are a lot of houses to the west.
Yeah, to the west and south. Yeah.
And I think you're right, it's notoriously.
Yeah, you go to the corner of Stephen Hands and 114, and it's like.
But even under the railroad track, that gets flooded.
Yeah, you're right, it does. So I think, and I think you raised a good point. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm still stuck on the pipe still going, because.
All right, well, that's part of it.
The water that gets drained that we're talking about, that's an important point, is the water gets drained, but that water is clear, pure water.
Yeah.
But the water that goes from the tank through the pipes to the trailer.
That's the other way.
That's Suffolk County Water Authority water.
It's coming from the water main through the
It's coming
trailer.
straight from Suffolk County Water Authority.
To the trailer.
To the trailer.
They're making the water better.
That's cleaner than.
And then to the tank. And then to the tank.
You don't use the water up, it's a closed system. Like, the water from the tanks is used for, like, there's no way to just use it up and not have to drain it at the end of the year. Presumably, if you're taking water from Suffolk County, it's going someplace other than just being drained after that, or maybe not.
I mean, the use of the water ends up being evaporated in the combustion process, so unless we ran the tanks dry, which I would recommend.
That's what I'm saying, that if you do that, and like, it's August and you're almost done, maybe just don't fill the tanks up or less the drain. Like just, I meant there, that's probably.
Engineering. Yeah, no, I mean, the memo, the response to comments is written, led me to believe that that was what happened. That
Right.
there was no water left over, that they were using it for combustion, and then that.
Right, because if that's the case, I think that the whole question, it seems like you have a board, I mean, we are concerned about water just being poured anywhere.
Right.
So generally, we're required to put into a dry well, so it goes straight back in the ground. Now, we're looking at as 40,000 gallons of water that needs to be drained, that's a lot. If indeed you use most of it up, and that's not the case, then there's less of an issue. So it seems like we need an explanation one way or the other, but.
Yeah, because if you're dealing with, let's say, 4,000 instead of 40,000 gallons of water, I think that'll change the board's concerns, level of concern. And, we wouldn't, I don't want to speak out of turn, but, we wouldn't worry quite so much about drainage onto the surface as opposed to 40,000 gallons, where we might have 10 times as much concern.
Right.
I think you know what we're asking for, right? I think we've been pretty clear about it. Okay.
So then does anyone else have any comments, questions, issues? Right. So does the board want to waive setback requirements for the trailer?
Yeah.
Feel about that? We're all good with that? Okay. Is there any additional information pertaining to noise that we need?
I don't think so.
Would it be premature for us to talk about waiving the public hearing at this point, or because the applicant's going to come back to us? So.
Yeah, I would, ma'am.
Go ahead, please, yeah.
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry. Just based on that conversation and hearing more details about the operation of the facility that's proposed, I would think it would be prudent that, and not difficult for the applicants to achieve, to add one or more dry wells in proximity to the tanks and have the plans amended to have an engineer verify that the capacity of those dry wells matches the tanks. Swimming pools were mentioned. That's a standard requirement for swimming pools of, similar volume of water. So I would think that the applicants could easily achieve that, amend the plans, and then come back to you, and then perhaps that's the time
and then we
to
can make
address.
a decision on public hearing, because it may impact our desire. So, see you next time. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know what we're looking for, right?
You'd like to discuss adding the dry wells, putting the.
Really, a more comprehensive picture of, well, the dry wells, the the asphalt piping, and but most significantly, what the reality is in terms of the amount of water that you'll be draining. You know, if it is 4,000 or if it is 40,000, I think you're going to have a different response from the board. And but either way, what your plans are to drain, maybe draining it onto the surface, maybe draining it onto the dry well, whatever it is, we need to have a better sense of that.
I think, you know, our planning department is very clear on what it is that you just stated what it is that we get, what we want. So if there's any questions, you can correct them.
Check with Eric. Okay, so we'd like us to get the dry well, the site plan updated also with the dry well.
Well, if there is a dry well.
If there's going to be the dry well on there.
And I would think that there probably is some drainage throughout the site, but it's probably designed to meet the existing surface area, not that extra volume of water.
Yeah.
I would play it safe, have an engineer design one or more dry wells in proximity that can handle the full volume of the tanks. And that basically addresses, you know, the fact of, you know, not just emptying the tanks and the water goes downhill and who knows where that may be.
Well, before you get to that, I mean, you need to get a sense of how the operation's going to go.
Yeah.
They may not need to have all that capacity, dry well capacity. They might. I wouldn't want to. Well, they might. They might keep refilling. Maybe there's water. Listen, there may be an engineering reason that you need to keep water flowing through those filters. I don't know.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, we need to get a better picture. Yeah, they might need to either, immerse or whatever the engineering word is.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the answers.
Thanks. All right, folks, we have 3 items to cover and then we can adjourn. First is, we have 2 boards of review. The first is the request of Habitat for Humanity of Long Island for a building permit at 50 Thomas Avenue in East Hampton, lots 15 and 8, 52, 18, 50 to 52, and portions of Railroad Avenue, block number 13, map 501, Suffolk County Tax map 300-167-4-21.1. The Board of Review calls for a $20,000 bond that looked over to be done that seems appropriate. So I move for the approval of the first Board of Review. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Passed 7-0. Next is the request of Gregory Forgon. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. 3 President Street in Springs, lots 16 to 19 and 36 to 41, a portion of Oak Street, block number 40, map 16, Suffolk County Tax map 300-95-6-34.2. Bond in this case is $22,500. Again, I have work to be performed, and that certainly seems like an appropriate amount. So I move for its approval. Is there a second? Second. Very well, thank you. Well, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Passed 7-0. Finally, we have the resolution on East Hampton Healthcare Foundation. That's yours.
It is. In the matter of the application of East Hampton Healthcare Foundation site plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-188-1-8.3 site plan approval. I read findings and determination and move for the adoption of this determination.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 7-0. Okay, folks, we have a meeting next week and then we're off for a couple of weeks. So I will see you here live in person.
This was a second. I'll second that.
All those in favor?